when Bill sang those verses of the psalm today, especially that last phrase, "But I in justice shall behold your face. On waking, I shall be content in your presence." I thought about a funeral I heard about once. Well, I'm having to dust this off a little bit. I think this was Winston Churchill. Don't hold me to it, seriously. He arranged at his funeral in the glorious St. Paul's in London that at the end of the funeral, first taps would be played. Not surprising. And then when the taps die down, on the other side of the dome, a trumpeter will play Reveille. It's time to get up. It's time to get up. It's time to get up in the morning. That traditional call to rise that's used in the military. It's time to get up. It came to mind because of that phrase, "On waking, I shall be content in your presence." I was told by a funeral director once to not talk like this about comparing dying to sleeping, because children, and we have some in church tonight, praise God, will hear this and then be afraid of, so I can hardly say it now because he chided me about this. But this is a very hopeful and glorious thing. Shouldn't cause fear for anyone. Going to sleep and then awakening in God's presence, just like that psalm says. And it also brought to mind something that I should have memorized after how many years? Every morning prayer, Canticle of Zechariah, words of the father of John the Baptist, in the tender, this is a wonderful, wonderful prayer that you might want to just make your own and use. In the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us, to shine on those who dwell in the darkness and shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. Dawn. Next time you see a sunrise, we've had some glorious ones lately, have those thoughts. These images belong to us. On waking, I shall be content in your presence. November thoughts. I brought a little anecdote that I've repeated. I can't not repeat it again. A couple of years ago, a family in my hometown asked me to come back and preside at a funeral because our families had known one another, been friends through the years, and then on top of that, one of the daughters of the deceased was a classmate of mine. In fact, Nancy's the reason I didn't do very well in history class. We sat side by side, and I was far more interested in the present than the past. Oh, what a girl. So where was I? Anyway, after the funeral, we were gathering at the graveside and waiting for the stragglers to come from their cars. And it just so happens that this family's plots are next to the Klein family's plots. And so I just, to the family right there, just kind of on the side, said, someday that's going to be my place of burial, right over here. And Nancy said brightly, and mine's going to be right here. And her younger brother said, there goes the neighborhood. Which I thought was very humorous, but he was just joking, of course. But a lot of folks aren't joking when they talk about really the afterlife as being kind of just a continuation of this life. Pretty much the same, except minus the suffering, to make it into a place we want to spend eternity. It wasn't a joke when the Sadducees posed that riddle to Jesus about the woman and her 7 husbands. They were challenging him about the resurrection of the dead, which Sadducees did not accept. And so they're trying to make Jesus look foolish. Actually, the riddle that they put to Jesus includes something that we've all wondered about. The only way we can visualize heaven is to look through the lens of this world as we know it, and then just adding or subtracting what has brought us pain, of course. Just changing things to make it a heaven. Jesus used another lens, but he didn't describe what he saw, except in very general terms. And he said something that's troubling for some to hear. In heaven there will be no marrying or given in marriage. That can be troubling to me too, when I think about my mom and my dad. Just a couple of weeks ago I had another funeral, and the kids, more or less my age, talked about, it was the second parent to die. They talked about the reunion of Bill and Lonnie, their parents, which is a loving, kind of a natural and normal thing to do. We need to remember that Jesus wasn't making a statement about the form marriages and relationships in this world will take in the next world. He was throwing something back at the Sadducees. We should be careful about taking this literally, what he said. In Judaism, there wasn't a consistent belief from the beginning about reward and punishment after death. I think we know this. There was some concept of an afterlife, Hades, you've heard that term. It wasn't heaven or hell. In the Old Testament, the idea of an afterlife evolved very slowly. Earlier literature, like that Deuteronomy they quoted, the Sadducees, assumed that God rewarded people in this world with wealth and health and a long life and many descendants. In this world. They thought that God needed to do all that now because people assumed there was no life after death. This is way back in our ancestors' history. But in later literature, and we got a glorious, wonderful sample of it today from Maccabees. It's about as late as most recent as Old Testament literature gets for us. There's a whole different understanding. They realize that God is not racing against time to reward the just and to punish evildoers. The Maccabees martyrs were very confident. Did you hear what they had to say? It even made some of us think about the resurrection of the body. He extended his hands, which they were going to sever. This is a gruesome. There's more gruesome parts of it were not included in the reading tonight, the tongue and the hands. He said, I expect that God will give these back to me in the world to come. Resurrection of the body, which sounds a lot like what we believe in. The Sadducees of Jesus' day believed that the life of the age to come is a continuation of this life and therefore needs human propagation for the species to continue, lest it die out. Jesus countered their argument by saying, those who rise from the dead are the children of God, no longer have the need to procreate in order to assure the survival of the species. Therefore, marriage for that purpose will not be necessary. But that's a different thing than saying married people aren't even going to know one another in heaven. Oh, that's not at all what this is saying. But still, when we hear that statement that Jesus made about no marrying in heaven, it only seems like a cold word about marriage. We think of our deceased parents together in heaven, widows and widowers yearning for a reunion. I would. But it doesn't negate that, what he said. Jesus is only saying that heavenly life is far different than earthly life. In heaven, marriage, like everything else, will be glorified. We don't know exactly what that will mean, but he says that there will be a new kind of relationship. There are lots of questions we have about heaven. Some just sound kind of cute. But they're still real questions. Will my dog be in heaven? You know, will I have my teeth again? Will they serve ice cream? You know, but these, on a child's level, these are real questions. Some of them, though, are very, very serious. Are my mom and dad together again? maybe we just can't comprehend the answers. Let's look at it this way. If we could talk to a baby in the womb, how would you describe a sunset? In a way that preborn baby could appreciate. How could you describe playing football, making an apple pie, falling in love? In a way that baby could understand. Maybe the best thing we could tell that preborn baby is there's a mother, and you're going to see her face someday. And she will keep you alive even after you're born. And when you leave here, life is going to be far better than what you have now. Trust me. Trust me. Could the baby believe all that? Well, what if he or she could hardly believe it? Wouldn't that mother still give birth anyway? Still give life, give love anyway? So maybe this is the best we can do, the most we can comprehend. There is a mother, there is life after death, there is a heaven. Beyond that, we're only preborn babies who have a whole world and glorious life waiting for us, far more than we're capable of visualizing or imagining. Or like St. Paul says, eye has not seen, nor has ear heard, nor has it even dawned on a person's mind what God has prepared for those who love him. So keep up the good work. Keep on believing. Keep on looking forward. We do know that we can trust God to not disappoint, but to fulfill everything that's good in every sacrament we know in this world, especially the Eucharist, and marriage too.